We are never far from those we despise, and as a result, we will never be truly close to those we love. So the young Englishman's haunting thoughts continue as he sets sail for a remote South Atlantic island to work as a meteorologist. Then finally, Captain Axel approaches him and lights a cigarette, telling him they're almost there. They finally arrived on the island in September 1914, but no one greeted them. The man was sent to replace another meteorologist stationed on the island, but there was no sign of him. Captain Axel joins the young man in a search for the previous meteorologist to ensure his safety. They find a lighthouse and knock on its door, but no one answers. Finally, the young man pushes open the door to find the only other person on the island, Grunner, the signal technician, who greets them both coldly. Grunner appears unconcerned by their presence and walks around naked. Captain Axel and the young man leave the lighthouse irritated. When Captain Axel bids him farewell, the man wanders around the island, pondering the life that awaits him there. When he returns to the cabin to repair his belongings, he discovers the previous meteorologist's diary, which reveals his name as Aldor. Inside he finds sketches, a photograph of Aldor's wife, and even a drawing of a lighthouse with strange creatures beside it. The next morning, he discovers strange rock circles in the sand and heads to the coast with a telescope to begin work. As he looks through the binoculars, he notices a naked man stretching in preparation for a long day of doing nothing. That night, while reading, he hears rustling outside his door, which he misidentifies as Grunner. However, the noises intensify with scratching and growling silences. He goes underground for the entire night because he is afraid. The next day, he calls Grunner and begs to be led into the lighthouse, but Grunner refuses. He returns home determined to fight and spends the entire day reinforcing it with a newfound rifle in the bag. Finally, the man enters the cabin, ready to fight the unknown monsters. He braces himself as he shoots them one by one in the cabin. He is eventually forced to start a fire because there are too many to handle. The next day, he notices Grunner leaving the lighthouse and follows him down to the rocks. When he is about to ambush Grunner, a blue female sea creature attacks him, and he points his gun at her. Grunner prevents him from shooting her by demonstrating her vulnerability. The young man takes advantage of the situation by offering Grunner some of his supplies in exchange for shelter. A short time later, as they enter a friend's cabin to gather his supplies, he realizes that the previous weather official did not die of typhus, but sea creatures. But on the other hand, Grunner informs him that they must return to the lighthouse. A friend then locates Grunner and inventories their ammunition, explaining that the creature he refers to as a toad is similar to a dog who will not abandon her master, no matter how cruel he is. A friend looks at her, fascinated by her existence, giving her the impression that she is unique among the others. Grunner then takes his friend up to the top of the lighthouse and shows him around. The friend wonders why Grunner chose to stay on the island when he could have left when a friend arrived. Now that he is in charge of his destiny, a friend tells Grunner that he will come aboard when the next ship passes by, to which Grunner wishes him luck. Later that day, a friend reflects on how a few days of isolation had recently changed him. Grunner summons him and orders him to bring his rifle. Fred observes Grunner as he prepares for the attack that night. Finally, the older man instructs him what to do and fires the flare gun, signaling the start of a long night. Grunner is enraged the next day by his friend's ineffectiveness and telling him to fetch water. He then abruptly departs, leaving Grunner and his friend to eat lunch in awkward silence later that day. A friend cannot confront him because he is both guilty and uncomfortable, but Grunner breaks the tension by banging the table and telling the friend that he only has one last chance. Days are always the same, nights are getting longer, and only nature keeps them sane. They manage to coexist, where a friend's daily task is to fetch water and the groomer keeps their weapon. According to a friend, one of the creatures may be returning to the lighthouse to reclaim the female sea creature. That night made him believe that the loss between battles are frequently worse than the battles themselves. Still, they take advantage of the situation to prepare for the next attack while their friend wanders around. On the other hand, Grunner asks him to keep his mouth shut and play, urging his friend to perform a checkmate. Grunner then picks up his gun and points it at the young man as he detects a creature behind his back. Grunner is then bitten on the foot as he flees upstairs, and they spend the night up there while the creatures try to reach them through the glass partition. Grunner sings a tragic love song until the sun rises and the monsters leave, believing this is his end. They are running out of supplies, ammunition, and will to fight another war. Later that day, while roaming, a friend notices a ship in the distance and immediately runs inside to get the gun. The young man tells Grunner about the boat at the lighthouse, but Grunner says he already knows about it, informing him that a Portuguese man used it to escape a shipwreck, but the creatures killed him. He also claims that the ship's cargo contains dynamite, but he believes it is all soaked. Meanwhile, a friend wishes to dive into the shipwreck using an atmospheric diving suit, but Grunner objects, telling him that his proposal is a suicide mission. The young man explains that a rope tug is their only means of communication while their friend is underwater, telling Grunner that if he needs air, he will tug the rope 3 times. After connecting a few small boxes, a friend discovers an infant sea creature peeking through his suit, causing him to fall. As more creatures surround him, he tugs on the rope and begins to panic. Grunner is simply watching the rope as he prepares to abandon his friend. When they get home, they immediately check the crate and discover that only one of the boxes contains dry enough explosives to use. However, no one attacked that night. 3 weeks have passed in the blink of an eye, and Grunner is growing impatient as he awaits the big attack. When Grunner discovers that she has brought starfish instead of fish, he kicks her and blames her for informing her kindly about their plan to scare them. That night, a friend leaves the door open while Grunner takes the upper hand and prepares to detonate the dynamite. An explosion occurs, killing a large number of sea creatures. Grunner, feeling unsatisfied, goes for the second set of explosives closer to the lighthouse, knocking out a friend and himself. When his friend wakes up the next day, he goes straight to Grunner and wakes him up. The young man is relieved when Grunner moves and begins singing a song, which he joins this time, while the beacon is in complete chaos. Grunner kills the wounded and dying toad on the beach one morning, while a friend circles the stones in the sand and places the carved bone in the center, hoping to be rescued. On the other hand, Grunner is still preparing an explosion to scare away the beasts, but there is no attack that evening. When a friend is fixing Grunner's mess while the older man is sleeping, he comes across a wedding photo of Grunner with the words "Love, Love, Love" written on the back. He realizes that the woman in the image is the same as the woman in the diary, that Grunner is the former weather official, and that Grunner isn't completely devoid of human compassion. As a result, his friend erases his day counting because he realizes everything has been forgotten, including the reason for his visit to work. Other than staying alive, there is no work to be done. When a child sea creature suddenly approaches him, he goes into the shorts and removes the carved boat. Behind the child stands an heiress, who appears more confident and daring with her troops. Grunner suddenly fires a flare at the child, killing him in the chest. Daenerys looks at her friend with skepticism and disappointment before leaving him alone. As Grunner continues to shoot at them, a friend chases him down and after a struggle, throws him to the ground and stabs him in the leg. Enraged, Grunner takes the upper hand and attempts to murder him with an axe, but his friend calls him by his real name and tells him that he is not a murderer. The young man maintains his role, believing that this is the peace he is looking for. The new groomer stands on the balcony, staring at various boats, while Daenerys dashes into the sea, where she swims freely from hell to hell. Finally, he achieves peace after discovering that there is no such thing as life without love, hope without love, or humanity without love.